Thank you for joining us today for EEA's Education Series webinar. Today, we will discuss how decentralized storage works and how it will be used in business and commerce. Today's call is being recorded and will be available to all attendees and the public on the EEA YouTube channel soon after today's presentation. The Enterprise Ethereum Alliance enables organizations to adopt and use Ethereum technology in their daily business operations. The EEA empowers the Ethereum ecosystem to develop new business opportunities, drive industry adoption, and learn and collaborate with one another. We welcome any and everyone to join and become a part of our global community. At this time, we are pleased to introduce our speaker, Adrian Corcoran, who is Head of Partnership at ZeroChain and works on blockchain collaborations, integrations, and partnership development within the enterprise market space. Thank you for joining us today, Adrian.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thanks for the introduction, Elizabeth. As already mentioned, I'm Adrian Corcoran, Head of Partnerships at ZeroChain, and it's my pleasure to be able to speak with you today regarding how decentralized storage works and how it will be used in business and commerce. Unfortunately, my colleague and COO, Mo Siam, will be unable to join us as he was hit with a bout of flu leading up to this presentation. So I'm afraid you are actually stuck with just me. There is a lot of information to cover, but I will make it as painless as possible and hope you enjoy the presentation. To know where we are going, I first think that we must first understand where we came from. To begin to understand what voids decentralized storage may fit within our everyday lives, we must first recognize where centralized storage sits, its current pain points, and the inevitable crossroads that one will face when looking to migrate. With the value of personal data being sold on the dark web at an all-time high, there is no shortage of talented data hackers willing to go the extra mile to subvert an established system or institution for the holy grail of personal data and the value it commands on the open market. With that said, it seems appropriate we should begin with data breaches and security, an Achilles heel for centralized cloud solutions and a minefield for enterprises whose data is breached. To put matters into perspective, the Verizon Data Breach Investigation Report, DBIR, made very interesting reading regarding the amount of security incidents and data breaches in 2020. For clarity here, security incidents equate to events that compromise the integrity, confidentiality, or the availability of the information. A breach equates to an incident that results in the confirmed disclosure, not just the potential exposure of data to an authorized individual or entity. All told, there were over 32,000 security incidents and nearly 4,000 data breaches globally. One might say that that doesn't sound too bad, but until one appreciates the level of exposure these hacks and breaches have achieved and the crippling consequences to the enterprises that they did. To put that into context, with over 58% of all data breaches involving personal data, it places the user and the owner in a very precarious position. Furthermore, with the governing bodies such as the European GDPR Commission and the likes of the CCPA in the US, placing heavy penalties on enterprise for data security and data breaches, being the custodian of personal data comes with a burdening responsibility. To give some greater context, I have taken an eclectic mix of data incidents and fines and levies imposed by the GDPR Commission in 2020. GDPR fines, the EU's data protection authorities, can impose fines of up to 20 million euro, roughly just over $20 million, or 4% of worldwide turnover for the preceding financial year, whichever is the higher. These breaches and security incidents have encompassed an eclectic mix of reasons, ranging from a technical issue resulting in all global employee records containing personal information being circulated throughout the company for H&M. A fine of 35.25 million euro was initially levied but later reduced down to 20 million euro. The next one would be hackers obtaining personal information of over 400,000 records in the case of British Airways. This again was another record case, and the GDPR unit levied a fine of over 204 million euro against British Airways, which was later reduced down to 20 million, i.e. the maximum fine that could be given. And finally, Marriott Hotels, which obviously another global brand and business, they were cyber attacked and exposed over 339 million customers, of which 31 million customers were within the EEA region, and they were fined over 99 million euro before again their fine was initially brought down to their ceiling of 20 million. There is a famous quote I would like to share with you that will hopefully resonate. If you always do what you always did, you will always get what you always got. Centralized cloud storage has been unable to quell the amount of global breaches despite its capacity to invest in hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars into this ongoing pandemic. But as the setup and core infrastructure remains the same, the question is, will it ever change under this regime? Which brings me on to nicely single points of failure and cloud outages. A single point of failure, in layman's terms, is what is described as an element, component, or part of a system that can disable the entire system and has subsequently been the catalyst of some of the biggest cloud outages. Unlike decentralized data cloud storage, where there is no single point of failure, a user not only has to contend with whether their data is safe and secure and will not be breached, but the hope that the very system they utilize will not malfunction or disable their access to their valued data. Over the years, there have been a number of major cloud outages, which we have all experienced in some guise or other, with significant consequences to the user. Too many to note in this presentation, I will say, but I will add nonetheless, I have outlined a number in the presentation with a diverse set of reasons. The first one being, as you will see on your screen, Google Cloud Platform. Now, Google had a 14-hour outage globally in March 2020, which had affected services in multiple regions, including Dataflow, BigQuery, Dialogflow, Kubernetes, Engine Cloud, App Engine, and Cloud Console. And this was all caused by a lack of memory in the company's cache servers. IBM Cloud had an outage in March 2020, which was a mystery outage affecting all services in the United States as a result of a connectivity issue in the Dallas data center. Probably one of the biggest that we'll remember of late was Cloudflare in April 2020. They experienced a global 4-hour outage caused by someone, if you can believe this, pulling out cables incorrectly when decommissioning hardware at a data center. Pulling out the incorrect cables may be something more akin to what some of our technophobe elderly parents may do, but one question in this particular instance is that simple to bring down an entire system by simply pulling out cables. What else should we expect? Adobe Cloud, also in May 2020, they had a global outage for all Adobe products and software. Microsoft 365 and Azure Cloud had an outage in June 2020, where they had a complete outage in Australia and New Zealand. And Equinix, one of the leading global data centers, Equinix London data center in August 2020 had an uninterrupted power supply, a UPS, that resulted in the City of London Stock Exchange and all of the city's financial institutions' trading desks to cease trading for over 7 hours. Unfortunately, with enterprises' reliance upon centralized cloud solutions, all of these outages have had a significant impact on revenues and profits, such as mentioned with regards to the London Stock Exchange and all of the financial institutions in the city. If we dig deeper on the London Stock Exchange, the LSE trades in hundreds of millions of trades per day. And this is a significant outage with considerable consequences for not only the LSE as a business and the thousands of companies that are actively trading on LSE's platform. Unfortunately, with all of the aforesaid incidents, single points of failure with centralized cloud solutions has been and will continue to be a common occurrence and a major thorn in the sides for their users. As noted, one part failure of a system may result in a cascading house of cards, stopping the system from working entirely. Thus, as decentralized storage, there is no single point of failure due to the very nature of its design structure and the amount of players that contribute to the ecosystem. So, what is the value proposition of centralized public cloud, and why has it been so successful when we have covered, obviously, these major outages and these single points of failure? As you will note from the screen, spending on public cloud has already surpassed 100 billion annually. But we must look first and foremost at why it's been successful. So, with infrastructure available immediately at exactly the scale needed by the business, this drives efficiencies and economics. Centralized cloud storage businesses have soared because of this over the years. In 2020, as mentioned, global public cloud spending surpassed over 100 billion, and it has been immensely successful since. So we must ask ourselves, why do centralized cloud solutions continue to break growth records? Well, centralized cloud services began to emerge. There was a huge transition that you may recall from on-prem to cloud, moving from on-premises within enterprises, within cities close to yourself, to cloud. As cloud services therefore began to manifest and enterprises removed their need to invest in on-prem servers and expensive infrastructure, they in essence created their own dependency on centralized cloud solutions. And herein lays the problem. As these businesses have scaled, followed by an inevitable gradual slowdown of growth, by which point most enterprises had already fully invested in cloud, and most felt they were too far down the line to turn back or seek an alternative solution. As this shift invariably happens later in a company's life, not at the very outset, but as it begins to become more successful, it becomes very difficult to reverse as it's a result of years of development focused on new features and not on the infrastructure investment or optimization that they once had in on-prem years before which. So to give some perspective on public cloud spend, for example, larger enterprises with more than 1,000 employees, 26% say they have spent more than $6 million a year in the public cloud. But this, of course, doesn't solve the issue of the burdening cost center for public cloud spend by enterprise. And with 94% of the internet workload already on the public cloud in 2021, I hear you ask, what is the alternative? Well, as outlined in a study by Andreessen Horowitz, some companies have already taken the dramatic step of repatriating the majority of their workloads, or in some other cases, adopting something of a hybrid approach with on-prem infrastructure and public cloud. Those who have done this have reported significant cost savings. One significant one, which would be mentioned in 2017, Dropbox, prior to their IPO, saved over $75 million in cumulative savings over 2 years prior to their IPO, simply by adopting infrastructure optimization overhaul, which in essence was the majority of repatriating the workloads from their public cloud. But there is now a newer kid on the block, and people are starting to take great interest with decentralized cloud storage. Having meandered our way through centralized cloud solutions, it gives one a better sense of understanding for what decentralized data storage needs to accomplish to alleviate the pain points and to provide stern competition to the monolithic centralized cloud companies. As previously highlighted, centralized solutions continue to be breached, and therefore one feels security and privacy is an apt place to begin to underpin decentralized cloud storage and its place and need in the market. IPFS is one module of dStorage. It's a decentralized storage solution for blockchain-based content. IPFS uses a peer-to-peer network model for file sharing that is decentralized in nature and distributed across many computers or storage nodes. Files are inevitably broken down into encrypted shards and stored across a network of storage nodes that track the file by hashes. When these parts are assembled together based on their hash value, excuse me, it recreates the original file. Data sharding is a prominent move by decentralized solutions to combat the threat of data hacks and breaches. And such is the sheer volume of nodes available within the ecosystem, it prevents a highly unlikely scenario for a hacker to understand where these data shards exist, who they're being held by, and how to retrieve the data from them. IPFS provides what is known as an archival storage solution based on slower download speeds and not having to dynamically download data on a frequent basis. Archival storage is typically used where enterprise would store replicated data, or individuals or entities where they may wish to back up their photos, files, computer, etc. But something that doesn't necessarily have to be accessed on a regular basis, on a daily basis, for argument's sake, you know, within corporate life. Whilst IPFS models have made great strides in their quest for decentralizing storage, they are still some way off providing an all-encompassing enterprise solution, one that could be comparative and bettered versus the current centralized cloud companies. Definitely work in progress, but a long way to go unless they are able, should I say, to resolve their slow download speeds. Focusing on enterprise, Zero Chain has developed a solution to cater for dynamic access, which is presently sub 1 second finality speeds, in what we see as being an all-encompassing cloud solution and a real alternative to the centralized services we are all familiar with. All files are erasure coded in data and parity fragments. The current default setting, as an example, is 1015, which is very much similar to a replication model, but this is entirely fluid to the individual or entity. But going on the 1015 default setting, 10 data fragments and 5 parity fragments, this can be set by the enterprise user. Of those 15 fragments, 15 servers would then ingest the 10 data and 5 parity fragments. As mentioned, the user's server selection may be decided by user, location, or cost, or any combination of which. With a 1015 configuration, enterprise may retrieve the data with any 10 fragments, and that's any combination of data or parity. This in essence means it would require 6 data centers, servers held on rack, to fail before the data is lost. Therefore, providing high availability and lower redundancy ratio gives complete flexibility to an enterprise. To put things into perspective, replication with enterprise is administered in the region of either duplication at 200% or triplication at 300% to avoid redundancy, and in the event a data center goes down. Note the cloud outages earlier that we have mentioned in the presentation. With zero chain, we see a reduced need to replicate data, having reduced the redundancy issue, which can subsequently save an enterprise cost footprint up to 300%, and is therefore a stern competitor for the likes of the centralized solutions that we are all very familiar with. For decentralized cloud storage to effectively compete with centralized solutions, they must be able to scale and have the availability to cater for large enterprises' data needs in order to be able to bring mass adoption. In today's economy, and as already touched upon in this presentation, decentralized storage must have the prerequisite infrastructure available immediately at exactly the scale needed by the business or the enterprise if it is to compete. Businesses will inevitably grow, and decentralized data storage must be able to cater for their clients' growth needs. Thankfully, decentralized cloud storage may cater to scale and availability with abundance. In the example of IPFS cloud solutions, the decentralized data storage system significantly reduces the cost of both hardware and storage. IPFS reduces the requirements for machine performance and thereby eliminates the need for costly investment in high-performing hardware and software. As hardware may be spun up at home, coupled with a reduction required in machine performance and subsequent lower cost of entry, it allows the IPFS storage model to infinitely scale. Whilst this is great news for dStorage and IPFS, it doesn't necessarily combat transmission speeds that ultimately enterprises seek. Zero chain edge clouds, we provide a cloud at the edge where all servers are on rack in colo centers in cities which are close to where the processing power is needed. For want of coining a phrase, it's edge premium provided at cloud cost. In doing so, this automatically provides a low latency network. Zero chain has an eclectic mix of storage providers ranging from data centers, individuals, and corporate entities, and its growth model is similarly infinitely scalable. We are currently partnering with a great number of data centers whom will be able to, one, provide to prospective storage providers with a managed service or a purchase option in order to provide decentralized storage to the ecosystem, and two, for data centers to run their own decentralized storage layer for their clients through zero chain with their idle storage that is sitting on rack within their own data centers, and also be exposed to an additional passive client base through zero chain's user base. It is currently estimated that over 60% of idle data storage availability currently sits on racks within global data centers, and it's a market we have already begun to target, namely with a recent partnership with Huawei. Low cost and high speeds. Excuse me. IPFS cloud solutions. By the very nature of the sheer volume of storage nodes available, the market for decentralized IPFS storage systems becomes a perfect competition. No single storage provider can charge a premium price and therefore ensures fair pricing across the entire market. Such a market also guarantees that only good quality nodes may compete and survive. Unlike a centralized storage system, IPFS storage systems use peer-to-peer technology. Data transmissions do not happen through the central server, which becomes slow at peak traffic times. Several copies of data get stored at multiple locations, resulting in quicker downloads. Similarly, zero chain naturally creates a fair marketplace, which is driven by the sheer volume of data storage providers competing for data usage storage, thus creating a marketplace on the edge. Zero chain's erasure-coded file fragmentation, downloads and uploads in parallel, excuse me, and due to the size of the file fragments, enables the finality to be sub 1 second speeds and provides a serious benchmark versus centralized cloud services. Similarly, with the sheer volume of data storage providers competing for user storage needs, it drives a competitive marketplace which is governed by the very pricing of storage providers vying for business. By rule of thumb, centralized solutions, enterprise will normally replicate their data to avoid any potential loss of data. As covered earlier, it is now more common for centralized storage providers to experience more outages, with the enterprise running the risk of data loss. As centralized providers have single points of failure, example Cloudflare, when one person pulled out the wrong cables, in order for enterprise to combat this, it has become a standard where enterprise will replicate their data to alleviate the unforeseeable at their own cost. Unfortunately, due to enterprises' ongoing dependence on cloud and a lack of their own investment into hardware, in doing so, they have subsequently greatly increased their cloud costs for data replication. Take the earlier example. Larger enterprises with more than 1,000 employees, 26% say they spend more than $6 million a year in the public cloud. If enterprises are duplicating and triplicating their data storage, how much of this $6 million is being allocated towards archival data that could be saved? There is a growing awareness of the long-term cost implications of cloud. More pain will be experienced, but there is already a shift in mentality with enterprise. IPFS is designed with high redundancy in mind to replicate several copies of data and store in multiple locations, resulting in quicker downloads. By the very design, redundancy is a key functionality of IPFS, and whilst it may compete on a cost basis with centralized storage, it nevertheless has a number of potential drawbacks. With a core functionality being high redundancy, where a data set is copied several times, storage nodes are economically incentivized to store new data, but this runs the risk that when nodes reach the capacity on their current storage rig, they offload old data to be able to store new data, resulting in broken links. With Zero Chain, we run an erasure-coded system defaulted to 1015 fragments, and therefore it would require 6 different geolocation data centers to fail before the data is lost. With this system, it relies less upon redundancy due to the very nature of its erasure coding protocol and the likelihood that it would be unlikely, even in today's society, for 6 different geolocation data centers to fail at the same time. Not impossible, but unlikely. With the increasing costs of centralized cloud storage, there is significant cost to be saved by enterprise by merely reducing their replication footprint with a low redundancy solution. It would be fair to say there are untold opportunities for decentralized data cloud storage in every market sector that centralized solutions currently operate within, and merely far too many to detail here in this presentation. With that said, however, and to give you a flavor of some of these markets, I have decided to highlight 2, namely IoT, Internet of Things, and NFT, non-fungible tokens. Before we begin, however, it is important to highlight that back in 2012, IBM calculated that 90% of the world's data had been created in the previous 2 years. Since then, the exponential growth in global data volume has continued at pace, and the trend looks set to continue, with 2020 creating and consuming a huge 59 zettabytes of data, which in other terms is 59 trillion gigabytes. One of the reasons I chose IoT is that, as you can see with the breakdown on the screen, the IoT market has exploded in many fragments and vertical markets, and is forecasted to continue in an upwards trajectory, such is the nature of the data consumption associated with this particular market sector. Rather than mention each and every one outlined above, I wanted to take the first example, embedded and productivity data. To put things into perspective, this is one vertical market and is a monster consumer of data, which of course bodes well for decentralized data cloud storage. Embedded and productivity data is information that is derived from sensors connected to machines and automatically generated metadata that exists behind the scenes and beyond the visibility of end users. As an example, autonomous vehicles. We are very familiar with autonomous vehicles, as we will either be driving one or we will know someone that does drive one. We're only too familiar that these vehicles use technologies such as cameras, sonar, radar, GPS, all told to be able to monitor traffic, plot a route, avoid hazards. There is much electronic nous within your autonomous vehicle now than there ever has been. Intel has calculated that the average autonomous vehicle using current technologies will produce a staggering 4 terabytes of data per day. To put this into further perspective, a single autonomous vehicle producing a volume of data each day would be equivalent to almost 3,000 people. We haven't even begun to cover smart motorways or the likes of smart cities that incorporate a number of IoT solutions, including smart traffic control systems, smart street lighting. The future economy will have a hugely increased number of connected devices, producing potentially highly sensitive data. It is therefore critical that this information is stored safely and securely. In conclusion, the volume of data we are producing is exploding, and our ability to monitor and respond to it using centralized computer networks is very much approaching its limits. For this reason, decentralized storage is uniquely suited to the challenges that lay ahead. A lot of research and testing and experimentation still remains to be done, but the fundamental robustness and utility of the underlying technology have already been demonstrated. As we moved to a data-abundant, hyper-connected world, decentralized storage could play an integral role in the involvement of the Internet of Things. Another market that I would like to be able to highlight is the NFT market. And this market has very much erupted since its inception and has grown in great popularity, with its recent market cap surpassing over 31.5 billion US dollars. Example markets of NFTs, as we know them today, will range from digital art, digital videos, gaming NFTs, which incorporate skins, weapons, vehicles, and of course, we're now more familiar with the likes of the metaverse, a virtual, all-encompassing world where anything and everything will be bought or sold. We are starting to see a fundamental shift from reality to virtual reality, and this in part has been fueled by the very fact there is an economic market where individuals may buy and sell NFTs for handsome gains. And this is now starting to transcend into a metaverse where someday soon we will be able to live in a virtual world and purchase and sell any virtual NFT, houses and cars as an example, beyond what is currently available today. But what does this mean for decentralized cloud storage? Well, in short, NFT storage is the most critical component to safeguarding an NFT, as these are highly valuable items that are digital. They need safe, secure storage. After all, if you were to buy a Picasso, it would be very unlikely you would want to keep this behind the bar of your local pub. Having already established the persistence of data hacks, breaches in centralized solutions, one cannot therefore stress the importance of decentralized storage to the NFT market and its continued growth as the market matures and evolves. But what have we learned so far? Well, whilst IPFS is popular, there is room for improvement. There have been a number of fundamental issues that need to be resolved in order to facilitate the safeguarding of these valuable items, such as an example would be broken NFT links. Lots of broken links from nodes offloading old data due to better incentives to host new data and a declining incentive model for existing data. As a lot of NFTs change hands for astronomical sums, you want to ensure your NFT is being held and not discarded and subsequently lost in the ether. NFT displays. Well, each artist can create a number of images, videos with varying resolutions and aspect ratios of the NFT. However, each minor change in resolution or aspect ratio is regarded as a separate NFT. And another large one being download speed, which we highlighted within IPFS at the very outset. Most current NFTs are currently stored in IPFS protocols, which is very much archival storage layers, which can result in timely delays to retrieve NFTs, which is probably not ideal when looking to sell your NFT in a fast-moving marketplace. ZeroChain's NFT solution has come up with a number of unique ways of being able to store these valuable NFTs. One being a multi-payer pool for NFT storage permanency, which would allow the buyer to purchase the NFT that will take the comfort from understanding the prepaid time period for storage with each storage allocation associated with their NFT. Once the NFT is purchased, the buyer may continue and prepay their own storage allocation to ensure persistence of their NFT for the future. An SLA layer with integrated data transfer. There's a high-level security protocol to safeguard NFT assets before completion of sale and the assets transfer. Another unique area is allowing multiple assets for NFTs. So allowing artists to provide their art with different resolutions and aspect ratios into one storage allocation where the allocation and the NFT are coupled. And one of the unique points, which is very, very different to IPFS models, is to allow mutable NFTs for live streaming video events. So pay-per-view events for artists and creators to monetize their work through a direct business to consumer transaction, enabling them to have complete control and generate more direct revenue. To conclude, decentralized cloud storage has an immense part to play in society and enterprise as we move forwards. I believe we are at the cusp and we will witness a transition similar to on-prem storage to cloud storage, and see cloud storage migrating to a low-cost, high-speed, secure, infinitely scalable, decentralized cloud solution. Thank you very much for your time and patience. It has been very much appreciated. And a big thank you to Ken and Elizabeth at EEA for arranging this.
Thank you, Adrian, for joining us today. Please feel free to place your social media handles in the chat so all attendees can follow your work. Thank you everyone for attending. This concludes today's EEA Education Series webinar.